This conference will now be recorded.
So in our previous class, we were discussing about work object status. So in order to have this work object status, we may go for either OO2B fields, or we can able to create the new field values also. So all the field values, in order to act this like an work object status, it has to be connected to one OO2B property called PY status work. So the same property will be there for all the assignments if you are not giving any value. By default, everything will be like a new. Suppose if you are trying to give any of the work object status to start shape, then it will be applicable to all the shapes till the end. Okay. And in between, if you are trying to provide assignment shape with work object status, then PY status work property will be overridden. So that is the thing we have discussed yesterday. And we have started working with obj open by handle also. So with the requirement there, what we have given is, so as per business requirement, we have to pull all the work object status which are starting with new or which are having this PY status work as new, that are to be pulled out, and it has to be updated with some hard coded value like this one. So it has to be updated with some hard coded value. So in that process, we have initially used obj browse in order to pull all the instances. What PRPC is doing parallelly, the same thing we are trying to understand following the same. So we'll be going for obj browse initially. It will be pulling out all the results. Then for each and every result, we have to perform this. So I have to pull one record from the first thing, and I have to set the property value like PY status work is equal to some result completed or so. Then after we have to go for obj open. Then we have to commit this. Okay. So instead of we going for commit for each and every record, instead what we can able to do is we can directly go for commit method after this. After all the 100 records are done, then anyway the next step as per the activity has to be executed. In that, if I directly perform commit, then what are all the 100 records that are updated will be there in the differ queue by that time, and commit method will be pushing all the records at once. Okay, so this is what we have seen. I'm sorry. So I think we have created in the claim, right? Or here? Yeah, this is. So this is the thing, right? We can able to go for right now here also, or we can able to have the commit method here also, but it will be like a much pressure for the PRPC. Instead, if we just go for commit at the end of each and every thing, then it will be at once pushing all the data from differ queue to database. Okay. And here we are giving something like lock and release on commit also. Meaning if the first record is getting picked up out of 100 records, if the first record is picked up, then it will be locking initially. Why? Because PRPC is performing some operations on that. So not only PRPC, any other operator working on one work object ID, it has to be locked off. Unless he's discarding or unless he's committing his changes, meaning he's moving the work object, then only lock has to be released. So that is the concept here. So similarly here also, if you don't want to uncheck this also, no problem, but there might be some cross operations happening, and there might be some minor modifications of the minor danger of the data overriding. So that is the reason we have to go for this. So lock and release on commit, meaning if the first record has been updating, if the first record has been pulled out, then it will be locking for itself and it will be updating. So it will be updating here and it will be performing obj save, and it will be putting it in the differ queue. Okay, differ queue only. Why? Because we're not parallelly committing it. So the lock has to be released only on the commit, right? So all the records, or if the 100 records per operation has been done also, if you're not executing this particular step, if I'm marking this as a comment, if I'm not performing the step number last step, then data will be there in the differ queue only. Their commit will not be happening. If no commit happens, then this particular things will be logged off. Okay, so again it will be stored into the PRSys logs and it will not be available for any of the operator. So this will be very dangerous situation. So that is the reason PRPC will be having some exception handling also in this prospect. So what is that exception handling? Let me tell you. Suppose if the first 50 records are updated, out of 100 records, this looping has been done for first 50 records, and first 50 records updation has been done, property set has been done, obj save has been done, data is there in the differ queue, and now PRPC is trying to look for the 51st record. Then if there is any error occurring, like server might be down or any kind of other errors where this particular activity execution has been disturbed. So in that case, what it has to do, anyway, for the next 51 to 100 records, there is no operation happening on this, and there is no lock acquired there, and there is no chance of uh, there will not be any problem for the few records. And what are the records that are completely logged off? For the first 1 to 50 records, what are the things that are completely logged off? Those are to be removed by the, those are to be, lock has to be removed by that, right? If you are not removing the lock, then PRPC will be removing it by default after 30 minutes. So anyway, 30 minutes exception is there. But but if there is any server down or if any of the exceptions coming, then PRPC will be having some internal error mechanism called commit with error handling. So there is one OOTB activity which is called commit with error handling. So I'll tell you the purpose of this. So this is one OOTB property. So in interest, they'll ask you. So instead of we giving commit here, so the purpose why we are giving commit here, so in order to move the data completely from defer queue to database, so that is the purpose we are going for commit. Suppose if any of the things which are still in the defer queue, and by that time if there is any server down, what I have to do, I have to roll back all the changes. So for that I have to go for another method. I have to do the rollback, and then after I have to release all the logs. I have to remove the I have to clear the data from PRSys logs where it will be removing all the logs. So these kind of things should be happen from should be done from our end. If the commit is failing for any reason, then what we have to do is we have to release the logs from the particular for the particular work object IDs, meaning the records from the PRSys logs has to be removed. That is one thing. Second thing is all the data that has been done, all the property set or what are the things we're trying to do for this particular OBJ for that particular record, that has to be rolled back. Okay, so that is the thing. Those two are the things that are to be handled from our end. For that, we have to go for rollback initially, and then after we have to make few operations for releasing the log. So these two are the things that we have to do manually if there is any error happening in between commit. Okay, so that is the reason instead of we going for commit method, rollback method, and releasing the log, this kind of things, PRPC has given one OOTB activity called commit with error handling. So if I use this activity, what it will be doing is it will be automatically committing what are the operation it has to do. It will be doing as it is. Let me call that. So any activity should be called using call method, right? Commit with, so click on down arrow. It will be there in OOTB class. So commit with error handling. So if I open this, we can able to see all the Java code. Okay, what it is doing, anyway it will be performing commit. So if the commit is successful, then it will be doing as it is. If commit is not successful, what it has to do, it has to roll back its changes. Okay, and it has to release all the log. So that is the thing it will be doing. Instead of we going for commit and instead of we going for error handling separately, PRPC has given one OOTB activity called commit with error handling, which is in the work class. Clear, right? So here, so if I give this also, we should be getting the proper output. So I think I have already selected. So you understood now, both of you, the purpose of commit with error handling. So if by chance if commit is getting failed in middle of the operation, then what we have to do, you have to roll back all the changes. What are the things that are there in the defer queue that has to be rolled back, and what are all the log that has been acquired for the particular work object IDs, those are to be released. Why? Because we are locking this particular work object ID unless commit. So commit will not happen if any error is occurring. So all the time lock will be acquired on this. So that is the reason we have to roll back all the changes and we have to release the lock. So for that, PRPC has given an OOTB activity called commit with error handling. I can able to use this also, it will be working fine. Clear now, both of you?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Now if there is another requirement for us. As of now, what we have done is we have pulled all the records which are with work object status as new, and then we have updated the status to resolve CHE, right? So if there is any other requirement for us, Other requirement is what are all the records that I have with result chg. So till yesterday we have one requirement and now we are having another requirement, let us say. So my requirement here is what are all the records which are with work object status as resolved chg are to be updated with resolved closed, let us say something like this. So what we'll be doing, we'll be again updating the values here and we'll be again saving it. Suppose in the third day if you are getting another requirement, what we'll be doing, we'll be doing the same thing. Instead what we can able to do is we can able to go for parameters. So parameters meaning I'll be defining the generic values here. Okay, default parameter values will be just giving it here, and if I run this activity it will be seeking for the parameters. So there we can able to give the values whatever the things we want. Okay, so let me save this as of now and run this. So let me show you how whether this is working fine or not. So initially what it has to do, it has to pull out all the records like result CH and it has to update it to result completed, right? So run this. Open this clipboard, sorry, database. I think I'm not seeing the correct schema. Data only, no? So my expectation here is I should be getting all the records with result closed instead of result CHC, what we were seeing yesterday. So it has to be updated with PY status work column, right? We can able to see this, right? Even commit is also happening successful with this method also. So all the time wherever you are going for commit, so blindly we can able to go for commit with error handling also. If there is no error occurring, no issues at all. Even if you're getting error also, it can able to handle and it can able to roll back all the changes and it can able to release the logs. So that is the important advantage with this commit with error handling. In interest they'll ask you. Clear, right? Now my requirement here is I'll be having one value now and it will be again changed to another value tomorrow or day after tomorrow. So instead we can able to go for generic design of this activity where it will be seeking for the parameters. So all the time I cannot able to have these values hard coded. Instead what I can able to do, I can able to just go for parameters. And the importance of these parameters is suppose the hard coded value from giving it in the 10 or 15 places in the same activity. Then if anything is changing, then I have to change it at each and every place. Okay, but if I'm going for parameters, going with parameters, so initially we'll be defining the parameters, what are all the place we want and whatever the value we want to pass the parameters, that will be keep on changing. So working on this activity need not be done again. So for that what I have to do is I have to make this activity to accept few parameters. So let me design the parameters first. So go to parameters tab and define it here and give something like old status. Okay, so what should be the old status? If it is like a new and that has to be updated to result completed, so this will be the old status and there should be one thing to give us the new status also. So new status. Okay, you can able to mark this mandatory also. If you're marking this mandatory, if you're not giving these values, then activity execution will not happen. So now this value has to be given with parameters. So I want to pass the old status here and I want to pass the new status here. So I'm saving it now. So I have defined one property here and another property here. Now if I run this, it should be asking for the properties. So wherever I'm trying to run the particular rule, if it is having properties, it should be asking for that. Suppose if I'm calling this proper activity from a on button click or from another activity or in so, then I have to pass the parameters. Else that activity execution will not happen. So that is the reason we are getting the mandatory symbols also. So the red color thing, if we are not making it as mandatory, symbols will not come. So I want to make this like, so I want to change all the values, all the records which are with closed resolve close to. I want to change this to resolve something like chg closed, let us say. Okay, so this should be the old status and this should be the new status. So old status meaning if it is executing any activity, I mean if I'm running the execute this activity, the old status what we're providing it here, that has to be passed here. So this particular resolved closed has to be passed here, and it will be pulling out all the results onto the OPJ browse, and out of which it will be again filtering out, I mean it will be performing the operation with the new status. So what is the new status? Say G closed, right? Understood now? I'm executing this. Uma Tulani, understanding now?
Yes, sir.
So if we just check here, we should be having that reflected. I can able to make use of this activity wherever I want. Simply I can just pass the parameters. Instead of going for hard-coded values, this will be the generic thing. Even if we get a requirement to change the values also, what are the values I want to pass, I'll be just sending it. Okay, and you not make the changes to the whole activity. You can see, right? It will not be affecting other values. Okay, so only the values what we are giving as a parameter, only those are to be picked up and only those are to be updated. Clear, right?
Okay. And
And
Chandra, I have one doubt, like, so the P1 work status, actually, where will we apply for the real-time scenarios?
I told you, know, whenever anyone is requesting for their work object status, what they has to do, they has to go to the bank. Suppose if you're applying for a credit card, what you will be doing, you'll be going to the bank, right? They will be asking you few details. What are the application they are using? That will be the thing what we are designing. Let us say, okay, you will be the real customer and they will be the users, and they will be collecting all the necessary information. And once that is done, they will be asking you to wait for 4 to 5 days. So what will be happening in this 4 to 5 days is, what are the work object what they are creating? It will be going for many approvals. Okay, so let me show you. As per the flow diagram, we'll be having 4 or 5 screens. So the 4 or 5 screens, if they are trying to do from their end, there will be some other screens also, like extra 2 to 3 screens. So those screens will be applicable for their managers only. Okay, what are the basic details they are collecting, they can able to see those screens only. Rest all the screens will be routed to their managers. Okay, manager 1 approval, 2 approval, or bank manager approval. So these kind of approvals will be there. Suppose if you are not getting credit card delivered maybe after the specified time, then what you will be doing, you will be calling the customer care, or you will be directly going to the bank. And when you go to that, and if you are asking for any status, they should be in a position to say where your work object is pending, right? So by just seeing this, they will be understanding there that your credit card is pending with the manager 1 approval or manager 2 approval. Okay, so this kind of real scenarios will be. Suppose if your credit card has been issued and if you are not collecting it, okay, so that is completed from their end, but you are not collecting it. So they'll be waiting for some time, like 6 months or so. But if still it is not collected, what they will be doing, they'll be pulling out all the work object status, all the pending things, pending transaction IDs which are not being closed, they'll be closing it forcefully. So these kind of business requirements will be there. So it will be very easy for the tracking purpose, right? If we have this work object status assigned. Clear now?
Yeah, clear. So whenever we are processing, pulling data, so we have to internally giving one status, whether the process is completed or whether the process is pending, something like that.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
That's up to us. That's up to business requirement. PEGA will not bother about all this. If we give it or if you're not giving it, or if you want to go for OOTB status, or if you want to create new status also, execute, I mean, behavior will not be disturbed. But for the tracking purpose, it will be easy for the user understanding. That's it. So if any status is given, then it will be of this red color symbol, red color flag. Okay, meaning it is still not completed. So if it is getting completed, we will be getting this color flag, that is a track flag. Track flag meaning work object is getting closed. Okay, whatever the status you provide, work object status, whatever you provide, if it is other than resolve completed, resolve closed, or resolve rejected, anything, then it will be showing this kind of thing only. So one work object can be either resolved, I mean, it can be either approved or rejected or cancelled, anything, right? So ultimately work object will be closed off. Okay, so then we'll be having this kind of flag. So this is just for understanding perspective. Any other doubts? Clear, no?
No, clear.
So now we'll discuss about new topic called data transforms. I think Tulan is waiting for this. Clear? Yes, no, Tulan? In the very first day you asked me the difference between activities and data transforms. I still remember that. Okay. So now you'll discuss about data transforms. So by the name itself, we can able to understand data transform is a rule which is meant for transferring of an data. So data transform rule can be created under decision category. So under decision category, there will be one rule called data transform. Sorry, under data model. Sorry, under data model, there will be something called data transform. So let me open any dummy data transform for you. There will be many OOTP property, OOTP rules, right? So I'm opening some random data transform. So what we can able to with this data transform meaning, we can able to set the values. Okay, we can able to set some values, some property values, or I can able to set some values in the page, or I can able to set some values using page list. Suppose if I'm having one property like first name, so first name value should be assigned with some value. What we'll be doing, we'll be going for data transform and we can able to set that value. Okay, that is one use. Second usage is we can able to set all the properties within one page. The third usage is I can able to set all the pages within one page list. Okay, ultimately the data transform rule will be used only for property set kind of thing. I can able to set single values to the properties, or I can able to set the properties to the whole page, or I can able to set values to the whole page list. So ultimately the main purpose of this data transform is to property setting only, where we can able to achieve this completely using activities also. So using activity also I can able to set the property values, or I can able to have the page copied from there, or I can able to set the values in the page list also. So whatever the thing we are trying to do with activities, sorry, with the data transform, everything can be done using activities also, but vice versa is not possible. With activities there will be many other advantages. I can able to create new pages, or I can able to interact with the databases, or I can able to go for integrations. There will be many advantages with the activities, but the ultimate purpose of the data transform is for property setting. And if this is your requirement, if your requirement is to set the properties either for the single value property or for the page or the page list, we have to go for data transforms only. Why? Because wherever the possibility of avoiding activities, we have to do that. So there will be cases where we can't avoid the activities. So in that case, there is no option for us. But if you want to go for property set, we have to go for data transforms. Okay, using data transform, I can able to transfer huge amount of data from one place to another place also. So in business, in real projects, we will be going with data transform very widely. Okay, clear, right? So let me create one data transform. It can be created under data model, right? Data transform. So I'm creating something like sample. We can able to call this data transform from many places. Let me tell you. Okay, so this is how data transform rule will be looking like. As I told you, I can able to set the property for individual properties, set the value for individual properties, or I can able to set the properties in whole page, or I can able to do the property set in the page list also. So here everything will be like an actions. So in activities we'll be calling like an methods. Here everything will be called as an actions. So if these are all the actions. So if I use like set action, what I have to do, I have to set some property and I can able to give some value also. Here we can able to provide the value. I can able to provide the hard coded value, or I can able to provide some property reference value also. So ultimately set is like a single property set. Okay, if you want to remove the page, we can able to go for page remove. And if you want to update the page meaning if you want to copy the data from one page to another page, we can able to go for update page. Okay, and if I want to call any of the data transform into another data transform, we have to go for action called apply data transform, where I can able to call another data transform. So where we can able to call one activity to another activity using call branch queue, right? The similar thing, if I want to call one data transform into another data transform, we have to go for apply data transform. The same thing, if you want to call the data transform into activity, so there is one data transform created, and if I want to call this data transform from activity, there is one method called apply data transform, the same thing. So they are under methods, there will be one method like apply data transform. You can able to check for that. There it will be asking for the data transform name. So I can able to call this data transform from the data transform, or I can able to call this data transform from activities, or I can able to call this from flow action also, where we have seen like pre-processing and post-processing, right? Where when we're working with activities like pre-processing, the flow action, there will be like calling activity also in the pre as well as the post. So there we can able to do, and we can able to call this on button clicks, or I can able to call this from flow also. So that is also important. Okay, if you want to sort the data, you can go for this, or if you want to comment anything. So this whole step will be commented, where we'll be using like 2 backslashes in the activity, right? So this we can able to have this one. Okay, so if you want to apply when conditions, we can able to do that. Okay, and if you want to go for append meaning where I want to copy the data from one page list to another page list. So page list is nothing like group of pages, right? PX results is one of the OOTP page list. Likewise, if you are defining any of the customized page list, and if you want to copy the data from one page list to another page list, we can go for this action append to, where target page list data will be copied and it will be putting at the end of this source page list. Okay, so if I'm having 2 page list, if you want to copy the data from one page to another page list, the data what we are copying, it will be appended to the last of this particular page list. So that is the concept. So provided these 2 page lists should be belong to the same class, then only we can able to go for append to. Suppose if the page list, if you want to copy from data from one page list to another page list, and if these 2 are in the different classes, we'll be going for append and map to. Okay, and this is for each page. This is for the looping, and if you want to come out of the looping, we'll go for this, and this is for exit the data transfer. So these are all the basic things. So ultimately we can able to see the actions what we can able to do here, like in setting of a properties only, setting the values on. So ultimate thing of a data transform is to property set, where we can able to achieve completely with the activities also. So do you find more any advantages with this activity data transforms when compared to activities? Nothing, right? Now we understood, Tulani, got basic ideas at least as of now.
Yes, sir.
So whatever the thing we are trying to do with data transforms, everything can be done using activities also. But activities will be having many other advantages. So the ultimate thing what we can able to do is like data transferring of data. That's it. It might be either from one property to another property, or some hard-coded value to the property, or data from page to page, or page list to page list, which is in the same class or different classes. Only those are all the things can be done using data transforms. And as I told you, we can able to call this data transform from many places. I can able to call this data transform from data transform, or I can able to call this from activity, or I can able to call this on the button click or the actions, or I can able to call from the flow actions, or I can able to call it from the flow also. Okay, so where we can able to call this from the flow, let me open our flow. So this is very important. So this is our flow, right? If you go to the process tab, at the last there will be something called data transform. Okay, so each and every flow has to be given with one data transform. Okay, what is this data transform? Why flow requires this data transform? What are all the things that will be happening in this data transform, that you have to understand? Interest, they'll ask you. So we can able to see one OOTB data transform called PY default. So this is something like PY, right? what we have not created, it will be like an OOTP. So this is the place where I can able to call the flow, data transform from the flow. So every flow should be given with one default data transform. That is py default. What it is doing actually here. So this is one of the data transform that PRPC is looking for in order to execute the flow. And if you closely observe step number 4, what is the step number 4? Py work ID prefix. Did we come across this kind of thing anytime? So this is something like work object ID prefix, right? What is it? What is the value it is showing here? It is showing something like C dash. Okay. So in the first class, whenever we are creating some work object ID, what is the work object prefix we got? Do you remember? You forgot, right? So in the first class, we did not make any these kind of modifications. We have just executed the flow, and then we have observed that all the work object ID starting with one default number called C dash. Okay. From where did we get this? So this is being obtained from this OOTP property, OOTP data transform called py default. We can able to see the step number 4. So in the step number 4, when we are running the flow, PRPC has to first execute this data transform. Okay, so this is the flow, and it has to come from the bottom here. So first it has to execute the data transform, and then after it has to create the work object ID. Here itself, work object ID prefix will be set to C dash. Then it will be creating the work object ID, and then after it has to run the start shape. Then after it will loading all this. Okay, so this is the process. So the thing what you have to understand here is py default is the OOTP data transform, which will be there for each and every flow. Okay, each and every flow will be having this particular py default data transform, where it will be having C dash as the default thing. Okay, so since this particular default data transform to be used for all the flows, that is the reason it will be created in the work dash cover dash. All the what's that? All the class groups which are responsible for creating the flows should be derived from work dash cover dash only. No, so that is the reason it will be created in the work dash cover dash. So py work ID prefix is the OOTP property where it will be having C dash value all the time, and that is the reason we will be getting this as an OOTP prefix. Now if I make any modifications here, if I'm trying to give the value like chg dash, that is what I'm trying to do. I'm saving it now, and now if I run the new work object ID, what should be the prefix ID? Now we're getting the prefix ID like chg dash. So whatever the value that is displayed here, that is not affecting here. Okay, why? Because it is again updating with the value what we're providing it here. So the thing what we have to understand here is by executing the flow, PRPC has to execute this py default data transform first. Then it will be setting up the py work ID prefix value as C dash. Once this is done, it has to execute this flow rule. In this flow rule, it has to again override the value of this py work ID prefix from C dash to chg dash. So that is the reason we are getting this value here. And in the earlier case, we are getting like C dash only, meaning we are not giving any value. If you are not giving any value, whatever the prefix ID like py work ID prefix has been set with C dash, that will be still there. There is no place to overwrite it here, right? So that is the reason it will be still showing C dash only. So ultimately py default data transform has to be executed first. Then after it has to just check whether any work object ID prefix has been defined in this rule or not. If it is defined, this has to be overwritten, and this will be the final rule. Okay, so why PRPC is giving two options here, like as I told you, work object setting or the basic things will be designed by the business analyst. So business analyst will not be having much technical knowledge, so they can't go to py default data transform rule, and they can't understand what is py work ID prefix. So these are all the things what they cannot understand. Only developer can able to understand all this. So that is the reason for their perspective, PRPC is giving this basic option. So here whatever the thing they're giving, the value will be overwriting the existing py work ID prefix. Okay, clear now? So this is important. In the first class we discussed, no, work object ID prefix can be changed in two ways. One way is we can able to directly give the value here, and next thing is if I directly change the value, If I'm directly giving like chg, that's enough, right? If I directly give it like chgd, then initially it will be executing this rule, then chg dash will be set, and then after we are not providing any value, so there will not be other value to be overwritten. So ultimately we'll be getting chg dash only. Understood? If this is my business requirement is to get the work object ID starting with chg, and I should not be doing it here. So what I will be doing, I'll be changing it here. Okay, if I change it here, there will be many disadvantages. What will be the disadvantages? As I told you, PYDefault data transform will be used by many flow rules. Why? Because this is under work dash cover dash. So in the implementation application also, we have created one flow, right? Claim search flow. Even that flow also should be using the same same data transform only. And if I'm providing chg dash there, it here it will be having the prefix ID set there also. If I'm trying to use the same py default data transform in some other flow, some other implementation or some other framework applications, then also it will be impacting the same thing here. So that is the reason we have what are all the rules that are completely created in the OOTB rule sets, or if you want to make this to be worked into your particular version, then we have to save as this tool into our corresponding rule sets, then we have to make the modifications. Okay, suppose if you want to work with send email notification, let us say that is one OOTP activity. If you want to make modifications to the send email notification which is created in the @base class, you cannot able to do it directly. Why? Because it is created in the OOTB rule set, and that rule will be completely locked off. So you can able to see the lock symbol and the private edit option will be there. So in that case, if you want to make modifications to any of the OOTB rules, you have to save as those rules into your rule set, then it will be applicable only for your application. So if PRPC is encountering two rules in two different rule sets, okay, so if I'm trying to save as these rules into my rule set, so during execution, whenever I run the flow, what PRPC has to do, PRPC has to check for PYDefault data transform, and it has to just check in the hierarchy. It has to just check for the rules in this hierarchy. Sorry. So it has to just check in this hierarchy. So PYDefault data transform is available here or not, then here, then here, then here. Finally, it will be obtaining it here. Why? Because we're trying to save as this rule into my rule set. Suppose if this is not identified here, as of the case now. Okay, so this is in some OOTB rule set, right? So then it will be searching for each and everything. At the last, might be finding it somewhere. So if there is any rule which is common, then it will be picking up the latest thing. I mean, as per the hierarchy only. Okay, that is the thing we have to remember. So let us work on that now. So my requirement here is I have to make modifications to the PYDefault rule, and I have to set the py work ID prefix. I can able to set the value whatever the thing I want. Okay, I can able to give like chg or ch dash. Suppose if there is any requirement where you have to give the py work ID prefix with some dynamic values. Okay, dynamic values meaning if you want to generate work object ID prefix to all the credit card customers who are booking for this particular month. So if there are any bookings for the credit card for that month, all the work object ID prefix should start with July. Okay, if any of the bookings happening in the next month, then all the work object ID prefix should start with August. So in this case, if this kind of requirements are coming, then we can able to go for functions. Okay, function meaning where I can able to get the calendar, and using which I can able to obtain the system data, and I can able to filter out the filter out the month value or the year value. So there will be cases where we have to go for dynamically changing of this also. Suppose if you want to create all the work object ID prefix with today's date, okay, then what are all the work object IDs creating? Whenever we are running this particular default data transform, the same date we have to get it. So July-1, July-2, or if I'm trying to create the work object ID on August 1st, then I should be getting all the work object IDs created with August 1, then after August 2 likewise. Okay, so based on the system current date, work object ID will be changed. So if we go for functions, then we can able to get the hard values dynamically. For that we have to go for this. If we click on gear icon, I can able to see all the expression builder having functions. Okay, if I click on browse, I'll be seeing all the functions. Suppose if you're not going for PEGA, if you're working with other technologies where you have to identify the system date time, or if you want to identify the length of a string, or if you want to identify the current date, current month. So those kind of things. For each and everything, there will be separate functions. If you want to go for the length of the string, then we will be going like in length dot string, something like this. So likewise, every function has been automatically included in PEGA, and we have to just browse it and use it here. Okay, if I just click on functions, I can able to see all the available. So let me show you something like date time. If I open this, there is one big library for the date and time. Whatever the thing we can able to use, we can go for it. So add calendar is for adding a calendar, or if you want to compare two dates, we can able to use this particular function. So these are all functions. We should be calling this as in functions. Okay, you can able to have this functions library open using this expression builder. If you want to get the current date, we can able to get it. If you want to get the current date time, we can able to have this. Okay, if we just mouse over on this, so we can able to get the usage also. If I mouse over on this, at the last we are seeing something like example, right? So example, what should be the thing we have to define it like current date, MMY, DD. So this should be the format. So if I just define it like this, what I will be getting? I'll be getting like Jan 21st, 2009. Okay, so on mouse overing this also we'll be getting the example how to use this. Okay, and if you mouse over on the date, so it will be coming like this. So these are all the things. If you want to get for the system current date, we can able to do this. Okay, so these are all the functions. Similarly, there will be functions related to strings also. So if you want to perform any mathematical operations, we can able to go for this. There will be something related to strings also. If you want to identify the length of a string, or if any value is having the matching with the string value, we can go for this one. If any string ends with any letter, if you want to identify that, we can able to go for this. We'll be using this when we're working with validations. So validations like I'll be using this for the first name comparison last name. So in the registering of the first page, first name should not be equal to the last name. I cannot able to give both the names as same. So then I'll be going for contains. If the last name is containing the first name, then I want to show some error message. So those kind of places we'll be going for the strings. Based on the business library, there will be much usage of these particular functions, and we'll be using for this. Okay. So if any equals ignore case, meaning if any of the two strings are equal, irrespective of the case, then we can able to go for this function. Okay, is if there is any alphanumeric in the particular string, if there is any double or integer, so these kind of things we can able to identify. So there will be something like length also. So length is one of the function where we can able to identify the length of the string. So these are all the things. Okay. So as I told you, our requirement here is to generate the work object IDs with the month. So if I'm creating this in the month, then I should be getting like in July. If it is created in the August, then I should be getting like an August. So based on the current date time, we have to show the month. Okay, based on the system date time. So for that, what I just told you, we can able to go for automatic functions, and the two we will be having this date library. So under datetime library, we'll be having many functions. We can able to go for either current date time, or this is the one we can able to go for. Okay, so if we just mouse over on this, we can able to get the usage of that, and we can able to use this. Okay, so in order to make any modifications to the OOTB rule, you have to save as this into our rule set, else it will not work. You cannot able to make modifications. For the testing purpose, you can able to go for private edit. If I click on private edit, if what are the changes you are making, that will be reflected there for you. This will not be impacting other operator IDs login. So other operator ID will not be knowing whether you are clicking on private edit or not. You can able to make the changes, and you can able to save this also. No issues at all. Okay. So let me save this and execute it for you. Why? Because most of the people will be asking me whether they can able to make changes to the private edit or not. We can able to do that. think it is not coming right. So from where are we getting this h dash then? Okay, I think we have to check in this. I think it is not coming. Why? Okay, so we can able to see this reflected, but this will not be impacting other people. But if we are trying to check out and make some modifications, then it will be reflecting other people changes also, meaning they can able to identify that you are working on one rule and you have taken complete control of that particular rule. So if they want to make modifications, then you have to discard your changes or you have to check in. Whatever the thing you're trying to make there, they will be easily, they can able to easily identify. But if it is in the private edit, no one will be knowing anything. You can able to save this or you can able to discard this also. So this is just for testing purpose. Once this is done, what we'll be doing, we'll be discarding the necessary changes, and then after we'll be saving as this rule to into our rule set, then we'll be applying the same modifications what we are doing now. Okay, so this should be the approach. So directly if you're saving this into your rule set and making the modifications, and if the output is not coming, so that will be the different case. So first you have to make, you can make modifications directly here by clicking on private edit. Once these changes are completely applicable, then you can save as this rule into your rule set, and then you can able to make modifications and check in there. Okay, so right now I'm trying to save as this into my rule set. So this is the rule set. So I want to use this into context. So this is already created in the work dash cow dash. I don't want to make modifications. Create and open. So now if I save this, what PRPC has to do while running the flow, it has to check for the pivot default data transform. First, it has to check for this rule set hierarchy. So initially only it will be identifying this particular rule. It will not be going for OOTB rule to pick this particular rule. Okay. So for that, let me again go for functions. So let me open this. As I told you, if we click on browse, we'll be getting all the functions. Open this and we can go for data. So here we can able to see something like current date, right? So you check at the last in the example, in the pop-up example, we can able to see current date usage like MMM, DD, hours, minutes, and seconds, right? If I provide all these, what I'm getting in the output, as per the month, I'll be getting like January, then date DD as 21, and YYY like 2009. Okay. And in this case, our requirement here is to show only month. I don't want time, so I will not be providing the time there. If I want only year, we can directly go for YYY. If you want only date, we can able to go for DD. And if you want only month, I'll be just clicking on MMM. That's it. So open this. Before that, erase this one. What is it like C dash? So what is the usage? It should be in the double quotes like MM. I'm giving like this. Okay. And after that, what we have to do? Okay, after that is provided, we have to provide this time zone. So I'm providing it like IST. So it's also given in the caps lock, right? It's given in the uppercase. So I'm giving like IST and close the bracket. So if we just click on test, we should be getting the output. We are getting correctly. So July is the thing that what I'm expecting. Okay. So after this, if you want to add some hard-coded value also, we can able to do that. So it just give like this. So that is not accepting. I think we have to give concatenation. You can able to see in the output, right? After this, if you want to get hyphen, we have to give it the hard-coded values, and plus symbol is for the concatenating of the string 1 and 2. Okay, I'm submitting this. Now this is in my rule set only. I'm saving it now. Now if I run the flow, I should be getting work object ID created with JUL1. It should be by JUL1 only. Why? Because this is the new thing. I think I have created a work object IDs earlier. So this is the thing, right? So understood now? Suppose if you're trying to create it in the August, we should be getting like in August 1. Okay, if work object ID prefix is the unique thing, then it will be encountering or it will be having the value starting from 1. Okay, so this is how we can able to make use of the functions. So the thing what you have to understand here is PyDefault data transform will be executed first, and it will be setting up the py work id prefix to default value, whatever the thing it is provided, and after this then it will be finally executing the value like the thing what we're defining the application rule form. Okay, so finally based on the finally the application rule form value will be the latest one. This is made because for the business analyst, that will be very easy for the business analyst. That is the reason it is added there. The value will be updated there. If you're not providing any value there also, there will not be any issues or error occurring. It will be carrying the same values. Clear now? Any doubts? Uma, Tulani? Uma?
Yes, sir.
Yes, clear, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So similarly, whenever you are working with OOTB rules, which are in the out of your rule set, then what you have to do is we have to make this particular rule to be applicable into your particular rule set. It might be the version, whatever the version you want to work on, version might be different, and rule set will be this, it should be the same. Then only this rule will be picked up. Else, if you are trying to make modifications to the existing OOTB rule, which will not, that will not be applicable. It has to be made private edit, and if that will be only for the testing prospect. So that is the reason we have to save as this in our rule set. Okay, so whenever we are executing any of the data transform, at the last there will be something called call superclass data transform. Okay, so this will be checked by default. There is much importance of this one. I think we'll discuss it in the tomorrow's class. So the thing what it will be doing is whenever it is executing this particular data transform, if this checkbox is checked, then PRPC has to check for the same data transform rule with the same name, whether it is existing in the previous parent classes or not. Okay, the meaning, if I'm trying to run this particular data transform, what it has to do, it has to just check in its parent classes. What are all the parent classes for this? It will be like in work dash and then after at the base class, right? So there will be two parents for this. If I'm having some hundreds of parents also, it has to check in each and everything. So what it has to do, if I'm running this and if this is checked, PRPC has to just check for its immediate parent. What will be the immediate parent? Work dash. So in work dash class, it has to just check whether the data transform with the same name is existing or not. If it is existing, then it has to execute that rule first. Then after it has to execute the child rule. Okay, so if it is having rule existing in work dash as well as in the base class, and if I'm trying to request for the same rule from work dash cover dash, what it has to do first, initially it has to just check for the parent whether this particular rule is there or not with the same name. If it is there, let us say if it is there, then it has to execute that activity before executing that data transform, right? Before executing the data transform, it has to again check whether this particular checkbox is there checked or not. If it is not checked, then it has to just execute that activity, and then it has to come back to the previous activity. Now it has to come back to the main calling activity like work dash cover dash activity. Suppose if the activity is checked in the work dash also, then what it has to do, it has to again check for its parent in that parent data transform whether same name data transform is there or not. If it is there, then first that activity has to be executed, then after the second parent activity should be executed, and finally child activity should be executed. Okay, so this will be the concept. We will be discussing this tomorrow in detail. Clear, right, both of you?
Yes, sir.
And